Oh boys, I'm so excited to check my fucking YouTube channel. Oh, let's go. 456 views. Temperature? What the fuck? Hello, darkness, my old friend. I need to talk to you again. How did they dislike my video? I tried so hard to put on a good show. Maybe this means that I'm just not good at it. Should I quit? To avoid all future disappointments. No, fuck that, I love my show. One opinion, don't make me wrong. Pick myself up and just keep moving on. Gonna write this bloody stupid epic song. Because my self-worth isn't based on what you think of me, but internally. Don't try too hard to please them. Oh, hey there. So welcome back, guys, to this episode. This recipe from the Kitchen Evolution. Just before I get started with today's recipe, I just wanted to touch on what my intro video was all about, which is this insatiable desire that us humans have to try and please everyone. I can tell you with absolute certainty that if you're going out on a limb, you're learning new skills, you're trying new things, you're trying to understand who you are and what you want to do in life, you are going to attract some negativity along the way. It's inevitable, you cannot avoid it. But the most important thing to understand is that if you figure out what your values are, your core values, who you want to become, and you live in integrity to those values, other people's opinions don't mean shit. I mean, I got a comment that was like, we wish you didn't swear. And to that, I'm just kind of like, fuck it.
Fuck the police coming straight from the underground.
Like, I'm doing what I want to do. I got a downvote. I got a comment saying that I shouldn't be swearing. Like, I'm living in integrity with my values. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm doing the absolute best that I can to provide you guys with some epic information, some Humour, and some epic recipes along the way. I'm totally fine with attracting some negativity. I asked for critical feedback. I accept the critical feedback. If it's gonna make my channel better, if it's gonna make my recipes better, my camera work better, my audio better, but there's gonna be negativity that's completely unfounded. It's not just with this, it's with everything in life. If you're trying new things, I guarantee you, someone is going to come along and try and put you down. If you are totally cool with who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it, their opinions are shit. Like literal shit. It doesn't matter. The only person's opinion who really matters about what you're doing and who you are at the end of the day is yours and yours alone. So without further ado, guys, I want to introduce you to my vegan cinnamon rolls. Okay, my friends, so the very first thing we need to do to make our cinnamon rolls is make the dough. It's going to be really buttery, really fluffy, super epic dough. So the first ingredient that we need is 3 cups of just all-purpose, normal, nothing special flour. You don't want to get bread flour, you don't want to get gluten flour, just all-purpose, regular baking flour. I'm going to take a tablespoon of instant yeast, which is about 1 yeast packet if you're buying pre-packaged yeast. You know, the 8-gram packs, it's roughly 1 tablespoon, that'll be totally fine. We want 2 tablespoons of sugar, just normal white sugar. I actually had to go out and buy some sugar because we haven't had white sugar in the house for pretty long time, which is kind of cool. Two tablespoons of that, and just a teaspoon of salt. I typically use pink Himalayan salt just because it has higher mineral content than, you know, iodized white salt or table salt. But I mean, we're making cinnamon rolls, so this isn't going to be a health recipe. What we want to do next is just get a small saucepan and put 3 tablespoons of some vegan butter or margarine in, and a cup of soy milk. We're just going to heat that up until it's a little bit warm, warmer than lukewarm, but definitely not boiling, just so that the butter's melted. Where's my parts? So just in the saucepan on low heat, I'm going to put in 3 tablespoons of vegan butter and 1 cup of soy milk. So you guys have probably heard some, you know, negative things about soy over the years. I just want to let you know that soy is actually incredibly good for you. The actual scientific data consensus states that soy intake is actually very, very good for positive health outcomes. This whole thing about phytoestrogens, I'll get into on another episode, but pretty much at the end of the day, if you're a plant, I'd be a little bit worried about phytoestrogens. If you're human, not so much. So just heating this up on low heat until you see the butter start to melt fully. So you're starting to see the butter melting and the fat is starting to kind of float on top. That's perfectly fine. Oven off. Now you just want to mix the ingredients together a wee bit. It doesn't need to be perfect at all. Make a little well in the center. Pour the liquid in. The best way to start mixing these together is to just pull the dry ingredients from the outside into the middle. You see it starts to mix quite nicely there. You don't get all the stickiness. It's good. Once the dough starts really coming together like this, you're just gonna take this off the spoon. You're gonna start kneading it with your hand. We're gonna knead it until we get a really nice soft, pliable dough. I'll show you what that looks like when it's finished. And then after that, we're going to let it sit and rise for about an hour. We want to bring the dough around, pick up all of the little dry bits around the sides. You see the crumbs at the bottom, they'll eventually get absorbed into the dough. It should be a little bit sticky. You don't want a dry dough. If you use the measurements that I've stated in the recipe, your dough is going to be perfect. So about 3.5 minutes we'll do this for. So now you can see the dough is actually feeling a lot smoother. It's not sticking to me, it's not sticking to my fingers. You can see pretty much all the dough's come off, and it feels really smooth. All we want to do is add a little bit of oil just to the top. Use the dough to coat the sides of the bowl. Make sure the dough is fully coated in oil just so it doesn't stick to the bowl. We're actually going to leave this here for about an hour. It's super warm today. Warm is perfect for rising conditions, so it will probably be a little bit quicker. We're talking about 45 minutes to an hour and 15, depending on how warm the inside of your home is. Put it in a warm place, cover it. You don't need to cover it. I'm going to leave it open just so I can take a nice little time lapse of the dough rising, and you're going to watch it rise over this time to get a dough volume that's almost double the original dough. So let's go.
I want you to rise up. Rise, dough, rise. Rise in the name of yeast and sugar, so we can eat our cinnamon rolls.
Recording now. We're back. So now that the dough has risen, I just want to kind of crumple it up. It's a little bit dry on top. You can see I didn't have a cover on it, but a cover stops the top getting a wee bit dry. Now what we want to do is we want to roll it out into a big rectangle because we're going to add the butter, the cinnamon and the brown sugar onto the top. We're going to roll it up and slice them into, I think, 12 individual cinnamon rolls. And then we're going to bake them, which is going to smell incredibly good. So, lightly floured surface. I'm actually going to use a wine bottle for my rolling pin because I don't have a rolling pin. This wine, no alcohol wine, because my wife and I have been sober now for 3.5 years. If you want to try a really good wine that's alcohol free, this shit is fucking dank. So we're going to roll it out to, you know, like a decent rectangle like that. We want it to be relatively thin because if the dough's too thick and we roll it up and we let it expand a wee bit, what's going to happen is our cinnamon roll is going to be really thick pastry. It's just not ideal. But we're going for about the length of about half an inch thick. It's going to take a while. You want to dust both sides so it doesn't get all sticky. And you're just going to roll out both ways until we reach an eventual rectangle. Where's my towel? Can't find my towel. But we want a nice thin piece of pastry that looks like that. You know, it's going to get thin in some places, you might have some tears, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're making cinnamon rolls, we're making some fancy ass shit. So now what we've got to do, we're just going to melt 1/4 cup of vegan butter. I'm just going to use the same pot as before, the one that just had soy milk and butter in it, because, I mean, you're going to get sick when you eat vegan food. It's kind of cool. Oh, eggs. So we want 1/4 cup of butter in here, and we're just going to melt it on low heat until it's fully melted. I mean, today is so hot. It's like 30 something degrees, which, I don't know American units, like, it's hot. It's not going to take long. Okay, so pretty simply, all we're going to do is just put our butter onto the pastry and give it a good spread around with our spatula, just so we cover the entire pastry. So you want to go almost right out to the edges, almost like you're making a sweet, sweet sushi with no seaweed, just butter. Hey, I might do a sushi recipe at some stage. In this bad boy, I've just got 3/4 to 1 cup of brown sugar and a tablespoon of cinnamon. And you just want to mix those together. And then with your fingers, sprinkle it all over, nice and evenly, over your entire pastry dough. Oh, I love the smell of brown sugar and cinnamon. It is... so much of cooking and eating is smell for me. And when you have two things that go together so well, it's just... it's so worth it. Pat it into the dough just a little bit, and I see these bits that have a bit of gaps. Just make sure you spread it over and fill all of the little gaps. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to be cutting down here anyway, just to even up the edges really nicely, so you don't need to come all the way out to the end. And with some... did you hear the ghost? With some slightly wet hands, you just want to start rolling this all up in one really nice tight roll. It shouldn't be too sticky. It shouldn't be stuck to the counter if you did a good job at dusting it. Like, I've obviously gone next level with my dusting, but I mean. So now we have a giant pastry schlong. Just want to pinch the ends of the pastry in, kind of massage them together so you get just a little bit of a pinched crease. You don't have to go too hard out. They're going to expand into each other and cook together, so I mean, it doesn't have to be properly sealed like sushi or anything. You want to get a really sharp knife. What actually helps is if you dampen the blade a little bit, that the pastry doesn't get stuck to the metal. Just want to get those ends out. And I go for a rough cut about halfway down, half again, and we can turn each of these into 3. And we should be left with 12 beautiful, tight pastry balls. And don't they look fucking delicious? So now I have, it's like a 9 by 13 inch baking dish. So you do the math, it's that size. Enough to fit 3 of these bad boys next to each other and 4 along. You want something that's nice and big and rectangle. And with a paper towel, just a little bit of vegan butter, we're just gonna coat the inside of this with butter, just for non-stick purposes. And we're just gonna put these side by side, push them down a little bit. These ones on the ends are slightly thicker because I totally YOLO'd them. And what we're actually going to do with these is leave them to rise for another 20 to 30 minutes. Again, totally dependent on how warm the inside of your home is. But I'm going to leave these for about 20 to 30 minutes and you'll see them expand and kind of start to begin to touch each other. Whoa, flip that one over. And what happens is they rise, they'll fill up a lot of the space. And what we can actually do then is chuck them in the oven. They're going to bake and it's going to smell so good. Honestly, your house is going to smell amazing. So I'm going to leave these to rise again for another, like 20, 30 minutes. I'm going to preheat the oven now so it's nice and hot when these bad boys are ready to go. And we're almost done. These bad boys are ready to go into the oven. So I've preheated the oven while these rose to 350 Fahrenheit or 180 Celsius. I'm just going to spread a little bit more butter on top of them and in the oven. Those bad boys are going to stay in there for about 25 minutes. I like to check them about 20 minutes because I don't want them to be overcooked. Hey Siri! Hey Siri! Set an alarm for 20 minutes please.
Okay, I've set an alarm for 16:25.
So these bad boys have just spent 25 minutes in the oven. They've come out, I've let them sit for about half an hour just so that they're kind of lukewarm. You don't want the icing going on them and then melting all over again, getting liquidy and stuff. So all we're going to do for the icing is whisk 1 cup of icing sugar and 1.5 tablespoons of soy milk. Super easy. 1 cup icing sugar and 1.5 soy milk. You may need a tiny more liquid, you may not, that should be fine. But you just want to stir it up until it's relatively smooth. Icing sugar tends to go a little bit clumpy, especially when it's exposed to humidity. And here, at the moment, it is humid as a fucking obese person's crotch. So, there we go, look at that. They look fucking delicious, mate. Oh, that's a wholesome dinner right there. All we're going to do with it is pick it up on just a kitchen spoon and drizzle over all of our Cinnabons. Oh my god, Cinnabons, please don't sue me. I just used a registered trademark name. Cinnamon rolls, cinnamon. I'm a rap god, as you can tell from my first episode. Just an absolute lyrical master. First taste test of the vegan cinnamon rolls. I'm getting this bad boy in the middle.
This little one.
Oh shit! Oh my god, that looks so good. Look. Mwah! Oh. Oh. Need to start an ASMR video. These are delicious. I hope you love this recipe. And just remember, at the end of the day, the only person's opinion who should matter the most is your own. If you live life trying to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one because you end up doing nothing, being nothing, having nothing. It's just a waste of your energy, it's a waste of your time. So figure out your values, like who do you actually want to become? What do you want in life? What do you need to do and who do you need to be in order to have those things? And if you live in integrity with the person who that is, you've got nothing to worry about at all. Water off a duck's back. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's video. God damn it. Episode, recipe, words of Kitchen Evolution. Please give this a share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys next week for another recipe.
Earth isn't based on what you think of me, but internally. Don't try too hard to please them.